Hello, my loves. Continue to update new stories on Reddit, and don't forget if you like it, please subscribe and like it. Now let's start new stories. Story: AITA for making my fiancé and I move away from his parents. I am 18 years old and recently moved up north to live full-time with my then long-distance 20-year-old boyfriend. Shortly after I moved up, he proposed. His parents offered us the opportunity to live with them while we plan the wedding and become more financially stable. We decided to accept their offer because apartment prices are insane right now, but we have to follow their strict rules for the time being. The most important one, and relevant to this story, is that we are not allowed to sleep in the same room or lie down next to each other under any circumstances. We decided to endure this for a few months because of the tough economy. Everything was going okay, but I always felt his parents were overbearing and very manipulative. They make promises to help us out of the kindness of their hearts, but there's always a catch. My fiancé's father, a retired cop and current lawyer who is also a hardcore Mormon, is a difficult person to be around. His mother means well but tries too hard to please her husband, which makes her manipulative and selfish as well. For the past few months, they have been trying to convince us to stay near them when we move out, even offering to buy us the house we want. I never thought this was a good idea because I know their intentions aren't genuine. Unfortunately, my fiancé is easily manipulated and believes everything his parents say. Now, here's where the drama started. 7 days ago, I had a bad gut feeling and decided to look through my fiancé's phone, which I had never done before. I found messages from an unsaved number practically begging him to reply. These messages dated back about 2 months. Alarmed, I managed to find this person's full name, email, and address. It turned out to be his ex, whom I had repeatedly asked him to block because she's not a good person and has tried to convince him to leave me before. Their relationship was twisted and unhealthy. She cheated on him and manipulated him throughout. After a lot of questioning and investigating, I got the full story. My fiancé was cheating on me with her for the first 6 months of our relationship, and he continued communicating with her every few months up until May of this year. Thankfully, the flirting had stopped early on, but she continued to message him throughout our relationship. He only answered when she would ask about us. He claimed he did it to prove he was doing well without her. This was still unacceptable to me, especially since I had set clear boundaries about this person. After seeking advice from everyone I know and reading countless books on forgiveness and healing, I decided to give him another chance. You can criticize me and tell me to leave him, but when you're in my position, ending a relationship I've invested so much in isn't easy. We've both grown a lot since we first met, and I believe he has changed for the better. Moving on to what happened next, the night after I found out about all this, I was still shaken and asked my fiancé to stay in my room until I fell asleep because I didn't trust myself to be alone. I couldn't stop crying until around 1:20 a.m. and fell asleep 10 minutes later. At 1:45 a.m., I heard yelling and immediately woke up. It turned out my fiancé's dad had found him sitting in my room and assumed we were having intercourse, which he adamantly disallows. What scared me was how he began accusing my fiancé of being a pervert and shamed him for not being able to keep his penis away from me. This terrified me because we've never had intercourse in their house and have never given his father any reason to think otherwise. It made me think he had been fantasizing about catching us or something. After more yelling, we all went back to our rooms and went to sleep. The next day, when my fiancé returned from work, his mother asked if we had found an apartment yet. We hadn't, and when asked why she thought that, she said his father planned to give us a week to pack and leave. My fiancé was upset and unsure what to do, so I decided we should start packing. I called my mom, explained the situation, and she said she had a place for us to stay and would come to help us pack as soon as we were ready. With this support, I told my fiancé that if his parents threatened to kick us out, we would leave the state and live near my parents instead. Fortunately, he respects my decisions and immediately started helping me pack. His mom happened to walk past our room and saw us packing, so she asked where we planned to go. My fiancé told her that we were done with their toxic behaviors and we have decided to leave and break contact with them. She immediately started screaming and calling him vulgar names. I'm assuming she was just upset to hear that her son would be moving states away. She ended up leaving in tears. Later that night, his parents called us into the living room and announced they had changed their minds and wouldn't kick us out after all. Personally, I believe they only did this after realizing they would lose control over us, so I wasn't convinced. I told my fiancé we should still leave. He's understandably stressed and upset, but I'm struggling to heal after what he did to me. We need to work together to find a way forward, but I don't see how we can do that if his parents won't even allow us to hug. Story, AITA for communicating my needs and standing up for myself. I am 23 years old, have been with 24 years old my girlfriend for 1 year now. The last few months we had multiple fights, about one fight every 4 to 6 weeks, and they have been getting more intense. What makes matters worse is that she shuts down when she's mad, sad, and distances herself from me. She's also a poor texter, which I got used to, but it creates potential for fights over text. I am the exact opposite. I want to solve the issue as quickly as possible and always do my best to communicate effectively so that fights can be prevented. Ultimately, it's the same topics that cause our fights. We both feel misunderstood by the other person. Our last and worst fight yet happened last week, just days after our 1 year anniversary. My girlfriend had posted an IG story that day of a concert she went to. I saw the story and was a little surprised. She had not mentioned the concert. I messaged her asking when she was there and why she didn't tell me about it. She responded defensively that she had told me about the concert a while ago and that I didn't seem interested, so she didn't bring it up again. Then I remembered. She told me about a concert, but that was a few weeks ago, so it was not on my mind anymore. After asking some more questions, she told me that her other colleagues had cancelled last minute and it was just her and Zoe, her best friend, colleague, ex-fling. This felt like a total slap in the face. Before we met, they had a fling, even though Zoe claims she is straight. Whenever we talk about it now, my GF acts as though it was a pure act of boredom, but I know that my GF had feelings for this girl and wanted more from her, at least back then. Their fling only ended about 1 to 2 weeks into our dating phase. I try my best to just not think about it, but in reality it hurts me that she is still friends with her. I have only had 2 brief encounters with Zoe, and from everything I know about her, I just really dislike her. Still, I have offered to get to know her and even invited her to my GF birthday. She agreed, then cancelled, which neither of them have taken me up on. I just wanted to understand their dynamic better so that I could be more accepting. The last time I brought up that we never got together, my GF said that she thinks it would be uncomfortable for Zoe and that maybe it wouldn't make me understand their dynamic, but rather it could make things worse because I don't understand their inside jokes. I'm NGL, this was a major red flag for me. To get back to the origin of our fight, I had told her that I would appreciate it if next time she could just tell me when she is going out at night so I can first of all wish her a fun evening and or check on her if she got home okay, but also I kind of expected her to tell me that she ended up going only with Zoe instead. I phrased my issue just like that and kindly asked her to communicate it better next time. She told me that she didn't want to tell me about it, because she thought it would just be better to not mention Zoe to me whenever she can avoid it. Things quickly escalated. I think I just kind of got trigger finger and asked more questions. She started getting more and more defensive until we both took on a standoffish tone. Her tone even went so far as telling me to fuck off and get my stuff, etc. When I communicate with her about issues like this, it apparently makes her feel like everything she does is wrong. She also said that instead of addressing issues she has with me, she keeps her mouth shut to keep harmony in the relationship. Long story short, I only realized a few days later how much her behavior really hurt me. The tone of her texts, the anger, the complete lack of acknowledgement regarding my feelings. I sent multiple long messages to try and explain my position only to be met with rejection. To one of my messages, she literally said that to her, it sounded like a load of BS, but alright, it was my opinion, she guessed. This fight made me realize that the issue was bigger. I realized that for the past months I had not felt appreciated or prioritized. I have been giving what felt like 180% and she has been giving me 20%. And even when I first realized that she stopped doing romantic things for me like writing notes, giving little gifts, planning dates, I have addressed it with her months ago. At least 2 times. Her defense was that she was in an antisocial phase and just didn't want to deal with big crowds and people. I accepted this and just reminded her that our dates don't have to take place in busy areas. What takes the cake and just felt like a stab is that during our fight she at one point said to me that she had 2 more concerts in September and October that she was also going to with Zoe and the colleagues, if they even come, so she can go on 3 concerts in 3 months but can't plan a single date with me because she hates people in crowds? This past weekend we spoke about our relationship dynamic once more and I brought up the major imbalances that I noticed. She finally said that she does understand my needs and just needed time to process. She even cried and said that she doesn't want to lose me. She says she is just so busy and overwhelmed with work and her family life. I feel like I was patient for so long. The decline started 4 months ago. I even pointed out ways in which she could show her affection that didn't take up a lot of time or money, but even those things she didn't do. Now I am just waiting to see if she actually takes initiative and caters more towards my needs. The past few days have not shown much of a change and she is going away soon. This week she will be on a work-related trip, which is the same trip that happened last year where she made out with Zoe for the last time. It all has a bad aftertaste. On the 29th she is going on a family vacation for 10 days. Am I the asshole for communicating my needs and standing up for myself? Story, WIBTA for cutting contact. My husband and I am 28 and 28 years old, got married at the end of the summer, beginning of fall last year. We planned our wedding for 2 years and during that time we had a lot of fights with my in-laws, his parents. One of these was the fact they had gotten upset we couldn't afford to invite 75 of their friends. Not family friends, strictly their friends, whom we've never met. We tried to compromise and invite some, but they made it clear it was all or none, so we invited none. They offered to gift us a honeymoon and pay for the rehearsal dinner, which we were grateful for. The rehearsal caused a whole fight. They decided to book it 2 hours from our venue, 5 minutes from their house. Because it was more convenient for them, but it was not convenient for us, our bridal party or literally anyone else invited. Ultimately they changed it to a place an hour 15 from the venue, 30 minutes from them. Our honeymoon wasn't really a gift. Previously said honeymoon was gifted to us in 2019 for Christmas and we were planning to go in August 2020. With the pandemic we couldn't go as travel to this country wasn't allowed. In 2021, they decided to use our gift for themselves so we never actually go. So they're gifted it to us for our wedding. After we got married life became hectic with moving, then the holidays, then 2 deaths in our family, illness, job loss etc. But we made it clear we wanted to go for our anniversary. Now, they are again, using our gift for themselves. I'm beyond annoyed. This is the 2nd time they have done this. I went out of my way to renew our passports for this trip and they told us yesterday they were going on it. They leave tomorrow. Plus our wedding card was an IOU. They demanded we pay them back for a table they bought us as a moving gift. Even though they specifically said it was a gift when they bought it. I'm sick of them giving gifts then expecting to be paid back, or they use them. They're constantly complaining they're broke, but they're not. They are very well off, their house is worth over 1 M, they have the newest cars, newest phones, always eat out, and go shopping at least 5 times a week. I'm sick of them acting like this, treating my husband poorly, telling us we make poor choices. We don't, we choose to live a modest lifestyle and they don't. I want to cut contact because it seems like they're going to keep doing this, and the favoritism for sale. Who lives just like them is unreal. They'll give her thousands they paid the down payment on her first home, as well as $50K for her wedding. But my husband owes them money for gifts. In my head, if they do this to us, they're going to do it to our future children and it just isn't something I want to deal with when we do have kids. Story, Best friend but only in crisis. Myself 28 years old. 28 years old. My best friend B have known each other since we were about 12. I was the new kid, befriended by her friends, which led to us becoming genuine friends closer to the 8th grade. We both have unhealthy dynamics with our families. Playing parent to our siblings, toxic relationship modeling, etc. Without getting too winded, we both put ourselves into therapy and medicated at some point to improve our lives. I got kicked out during HS, finished school. Boyfriend at the time's mom took me in, and left shortly after. I've moved around a bunch but always came back every 2 years to visit my friends and brothers, allowing me to slowly repair my relationship with my parents. She remained a pillar for her family. She only moved out of the family home once they were getting evicted. I happened to be moving back in town then, so it was her and I in a flat. Throughout our friendship, B often projects much of her anger in my direction. As a teen, my mother would ask why I was still friends with her because of how much I would cry at the things she said to me. She punched me in the 7th grade because I said I had never been punched. It was awful during her birthday month, which she shares with a brother and a family holiday. I still remember how hurt I was and how much I would cry. Her behavior was heavy, nothing physical during HS, but a lot of, "I hate you, you are awful and annoying," excluding me with our friends who would tell me the things she said about me to them, etc. We rode the bus together, so it was bullying from the start to the end of the day. Then she would clock back and act like nothing once her month had concluded. This is not to say we did not have extraordinary times during HS, this was just always such a hard thing to deal with at a young age. I cannot explain why we remained friends outside of I loved her and I felt for her. While our home lives were still different, we struggled in them and I knew she needed a friend. Plus, you know those friends you pass notes and notebooks to in the hall, who you know you can come out to and be safe. That was her. It stopped after HS. I saw her maybe once a month, but it was always a blast. We would speak in memes and YouTube videos mostly. Until I left the state, and at this point, she was my best friend. Despite it all, she was my person. But she didn't answer much, and my insecurities prevented me from reaching out too much with the lack of response. This continued through 3 moves, me visiting every 2 years, her having minimal contact and never visiting. During visits, she would bail or not answer requests because she had other plans. It hurt because I always gave at least 4 months' notice to my visit and would text our friend chats excitedly the days before. This comes to a head now, where in 2021, I was going through a DV situation and headed back to my family. She was my rock during the hardest part of my split. Hospitalized, B stayed on the phone with me, and I am eternally grateful. I also hold immense guilt for having her share that painful experience with me. B has usually gotten very close to people who are close to me. She doesn't introduce me to her friends, but after I started dating and making local friends, I realized how uncomfortable I was with how she gets with my friends. To the point that an ex-GF of mine has essentially replaced me. I have been relentlessly working on myself through therapy and self-help books, so I decided to talk to her about the harm I felt in HS and how I wanted us to be better communicators moving forward. Well, I was going through a lot at the time, but we mostly moved on from it. Until this year, dubbed the year I hold others accountable to the boundaries we have established. Thus, I reached out around February-March, telling her I felt like a backburner friend and how deeply it hurt me. She responded quite kindly, acknowledging that she treats me that way and intends to work on it. The last year or 2 have been rough ones for her family. Truly, I gave them money to alleviate, but there isn't much I can do. I know it is taking a toll on her. Her drinking and drug usage show it. I was feeling very desperate to help when my own situation came up, and it definitely ate into my brain. I tried reaching out more but was met with little in return. During this time, that ex of mine was posting and texting me about how B and her hang out so much and talk every day. This stung. Especially given the last conversation we had about our friendship. The longer I reflected over the past few months, the more I realized she only paid attention to me during a crisis. I have to be practically suicidal for her to take my pain seriously. I refuse to live that way. That is the past. Crisis and catastrophe are no longer something in my everyday life, and I cannot hang myself up on someone who only answers in the fire. I have barely heard from her since I moved again. We had a call she would bail, so I didn't wait at home for it. The next day, she texted, apologizing that she had fallen asleep but would call when she felt better. I texted back that was a week ago. She doesn't answer my text, she'll ignore what I ask and just ask her own questions, responding she's happy I am fine. I know she's not okay. I know she is being dangerous with her substance use. I know I cannot keep holding her in such a high regard for the sake of my growth. I learned how to crochet and made her basket. I was to send it to her and maybe write a letter expressing my love and how I hope we can find a new friendship in a different form sometime in the future. And then I feel mad. Then sad. What should I do? Story, whipped up for thinking to leave my husband. We've been together for over a decade and married for 8 years. We have 2 small kids and even moved across countries. Both of us work full-time in office jobs. I don't have a concrete reason to justify leaving him without questions, but I also don't have a compelling reason to stay. I'm at a crossroads and unsure what to do. He works, helps with the kids when asked, and occasionally helps around the house. We don't fight, but we also don't really do much together. I manage the house, plan vacations, handle all the bureaucracy of adult life, do the shopping, and manage the kids' appointments and extras. He does put them to bed and look after them if I go out, but I'm in charge of almost everything else by default. His sole responsibility is the car, as I don't drive. And he just does not keep it clean and washed. I've been diagnosed with burnout and am going through a personal crisis. Despite this, he hasn't changed anything to help me out. He doesn't make plans, and weekends just pass by. Any activities or plans are initiated by me. Even his gifts have become lackluster, with no effort put into the one thing I refuse to do for him. If we go on a date, it's just dinner and back home. Our sex life is down to maybe twice a month, even though the kids sleep well. In his personal life, he's become indifferent for years now, not going out with friends or engaging in activities. He just sits on the sofa watching TV or on his phone. With the kids, he's okay but lacks patience and snaps frequently. We've discussed therapy for him, but he doesn't care for it. He's not against it but not motivated either. He gets cranky and overwhelmed easily. I care for him, and nothing is outright terrible, but I'm tired. Tired of him not caring, tired of him always being stressed about his minimal responsibilities, and tired of taking care of everything. The worst part. He drags me down with him. If I don't want to do anything, he won't judge, which makes it a slippery slope for me. I'm unsure about the impact of a divorce. Would it be better for me and the kids? Is this feeling of I'll be better without him just a phase? I feel like we're together out of comfort and routine, and because we have kids. Am I the asshole for thinking about divorce? What should I do? Story, AITA for taking my GFS side. I've been in the same friend group for almost all of high school, for guys and 2 girls. We're all very close and I want to emphasize that there's no romantic interest on anyone's end. Both girls like people outside of the group and they have told us the guys are like their little brothers. Recently my girlfriend, the girls don't know who she is BC we're in a secret relationship, told me she doesn't want me talking to those girls anymore. This is because I often join their group FaceTimes. We usually just do HW and game together. We never speak one-on-one. The only thing I can think of that is odd is one of the girls and I stayed up late doing a college essay. I was procrastinating and she's really good with essays and she did the same for everyone else, but even then one of the guys was on as well. My GF also broke up with me at some point and ghosted me, and one of my female friends said it weird and my GF might still hold it against her. My GF has male friends and I've always been okay with it. They go out to restaurants and hang out as a group like me. I also want to add that the two female friends suggested adding my GF to our group BC. They wanted another girl, but my GF said no. The other day she texted me randomly at 12 a.m. saying I want you to stop talking to girls, and I ghosted my female friends along with the other girls in our class. I've since started talking to other girls, but my two female friends are currently still ghosted. I told my friend to tell them about the ghosting. They avoid me now for little things too, and I feel I upset them. One of them even unfollowed me. I feel I've upset them, but I really love my GF and I want to respect her. Story: AITA for dating my ex's best friend. I am 17 years old, broke up with my boyfriend, let's call him Alan, not his real name, at the time 18 years old, a couple months back. For some backstory, I had been dating him for about 8 months, and it came to a stop one day when we had another fight. Fights were common and over stupid shit, and this was just like every other one. He consistently ignored me whenever we argued and would turn around and simply not speak or look at me. Instead of taking it and staying and begging like I normally did, I decides to leave. I told him whenever he felt like talking to text me. I left his house and in a couple minutes got a text from him saying that he wouldn't be speaking to me for the rest of the day. I didn't want to go home, so I went to where I used to work and where his best friend works. Let's call his 18 years old best friend Steve, not his real name. I got myself some food and sat down at one of the tables. I used to work with him, and again, he was my, at the time, boyfriend's best friend. So, he knew me and came to talk to me. He had asked me where Alan was and if I was heading to his house. When I told him I had just come from his house, he asked me what was going on. I went on to explain to him what happened and told him some stuff about how Alan was and how our relationship was. He listened and responded and encouraged me to break up with him since I clearly wasn't happy. I was scared, and he said him and his friend could help me figure out what to say. So, after shift we went to his friend's house to figure out what to say. We figured it out and talked some more about the relationship between me and Alan. After I left and went home, I sent Alan a text telling him I was breaking up with him. I realize this may have been cowardly, but I was scared of what he might do had I done it in person, and doing it over the phone, I felt I wouldn't be able to get out what I needed to say. Later that night Alan called me. He begged me not to break up with him, and in the 8 months we had been together it was the second time he'd ever cried to me. I told him there was no changing my mind, and after a while got to hang up. I called Steve after and we talked into the night. Almost until the morning. That morning Steve got a text from Alan's mom telling him that Alan had hurt and called the police on himself. He proceeded to go to a mental hospital. He called me a couple of days later. It was a calm call. He said he just wanted to hear my voice. At this point I still cared about his well-being and humored him. He was let out a couple of days later and we had some belongings to exchange, so he got his best friend, Steve, to drive him to my house. He didn't have a vehicle. By this point Steve and I knew we had feelings for each other. Story: AITA for choosing hockey over my GF. For context, I come from a hockey family. Everyone on my mother's and father's side of the family watches hockey and or played hockey. We may not all support the same team, but it is a collective interest in our households. I played house league for 12 years, and even to this day my friends and I get together about once a month to play road puck at a local park. A few years ago, I 19M and my girlfriend 19F were 10 months into our relationship. We lived about 30 minutes away from each other. An epidemic had been around for about a year, but we made it work. She was talking to me about how I wasn't making very many plans or going out of my way to see her, and she was right. I've always been a very independent yet extroverted person. I loved going out, but won't make the plans to do it unless someone else does. Have no issues talking to anyone in public or speaking my mind. But when there are no plans, I have a lot of other hobbies I can do on my free time. I'm a casual gamer. I enjoy reading books, watching movies and TV shows, golfing, D&D, playing and mang, and obviously hockey. And on top of all that, I was a supervisor at my job and was in post-secondary school full-time at the time being. She on the other hand had no job, was in school full-time, had 2 friends outside me, had no hobbies and showed zero interest in mine. So she wanted to fill all her free time with me regardless of what I was doing. She never came out to watch or play at any of our hockey games, didn't like me playing video games, and would hang up the phone without a goodbye if she heard me playing games while talking to her. It almost felt like she didn't like me sharing my free time with things other than her. Skip to the rough patch where she's told me to make more of an effort to see her. She knows how passionate I am about hockey and playoffs are in round 1. It's the day of Game 7 for my team and I decided to act on what she said about me not making plans. So invited her over to watch the game together. When she arrives at my house she's decided to bring her 2 friends along with her without permission. Remember this is during epidemic and my mother was paranoid at the time so my GF could come in but not her friends. Since they all came in her car, her friends have nowhere else to go. It's 30 minutes to puck drop, so I decided to try and help the situation by going out with them to grab a quick bite to eat and hang for 30 minutes. At 5 minutes to drop I'm telling her it's time for me to leave because the game is going to start. She tells me to remember that our relationship is rough right now and that we really should be spending more time together. I said yes, and this hockey game is very important to me and I wanted to share that experience with you, but you decided to invite your friends who you are now responsible for without asking to see if it was okay first. She drives me home, but the ride is dead silent. When I get home she gives me a kiss goodbye and I said, "You can bring them home and come back if you want, but my mother is never going to let them in." She said, "I'm just gonna go home." I said, "Okay, I'll be watching my hockey game, text me when you get home safe." So she left. My team ended up winning Game 7, but she called me that night and ended the relationship because I chose to watch that game over spending time with her. So am I the asshole for choosing hockey over my girlfriend? Story: AITA for being upset with my boyfriend's mom. I'm 19 years old and have been dating my boyfriend for over a year. When we started dating, I was living with my older sister and commuting over 45 minutes for work. My boyfriend's family offered for me to move in with them until I got more money and could get on my feet. They kept reassuring me that I didn't need to feel rushed in moving out, that they enjoyed having me there. I moved in mid-October and it's now July. After Christmas, everything with his mom changed. She started getting more controlling with how much me and him were going out. We had to sleep in separate beds, etc., which at the time was fine. I tried very hard to maintain rules and expectations. Around March, his little sister caught me vaping. I didn't tell his family that I was vaping because I knew that he had family that had issues with lung cancer. I honestly thought that she didn't see it because she never said anything about it until months later. She didn't tell her mother about it until the end of May. When she told her mom about it, it was during his brother's birthday. Then her birthday was a week later. Then his stepdad went into the hospital. It never seemed like a good time to bring it up and apologize. I waited until what I thought was a better time. His mom started an argument with him a few weeks ago and accused me of awful things. I decided it was probably a good time to just apologize for everything. I sent her a message saying, "I really hate to do this over text, but I feel like I need to go ahead and address everything. Firstly, I want to apologize. I know that Zoe told you what happened with the vaping, and I want to clarify that I never intended to put you or her in that position. When everything happened, I was in the middle of a panic attack. I made a spur-of-the-moment stupid decision to grab it to try and calm down and Zoe walked in at the wrong time. I felt awful and had hoped she didn't see it because she never said anything about it at the time. I understand though now that she did and truly I am really sorry. I haven't avoided discussing this with you out of negligence. With recent birthdays and Stavo being in the hospital, it just never felt like the right time to bring it up. I also felt like it was something important that needed to be explained properly and I have struggled to find the right words to say that show how sorry I really am. I also want to clarify that I really don't drink. The fake ID I own is for attending concerts and other venues when we travel. I'm not saying I never have, but it's not something I actively seek out because I truly don't like the way alcohol makes me feel nor do I enjoy being around people heavily intoxicated. Isaac has always been a positive influence on me, encouraging me to pursue good things. I know I might not be what you envisioned for him, but I do love him and I am committed to loving him in the way he deserves and to becoming a better person every day. I truly appreciate everything you have done for me, and I am grateful for the opportunities you have given me to be part of your lives, as I'm sure at times it's difficult having me around. I deeply value our relationship and wish for it to grow into a genuine friendship. However, I can't help but feel that you really don't like me, which sucks because I am really striving to gain your approval. I have a lot of love and respect for you, even though at times I am incredibly poor at showing it. It's been very hard for me to find my place in the house because I've been so used to being the mom figure instead of having the mom figure myself, so trying to find that happy balance of doing things to help but not taking over has not been easy. If there are any specific expectations or standards you have for me, I would be more than willing to listen and strive to meet them. And on that same note, if I am ever doing something wrong, or there's things you'd like me to change that you haven't told me about, please don't hesitate to talk to me about them. Again, I'm really sorry for everything and I have been actively working to correct my mistakes. If you're okay with it, I'd really like to work on earning your forgiveness and building a better relationship with you. I didn't hear anything from her for almost a week aside from nasty glares across the kitchen. Then today I received a message from her saying, "It has taken me a few days to process your text and put my thoughts into words. My frustrations have it stemmed from whether or not I like you. I do not choose my children's love interests. I love and support my children, full stop. In our home we have boundaries and expectations. We believe that relationships are built on trust and mutual respect and consideration. I lost my sister to lung cancer and vaping leaves behind nasty toxins. No one smokes or vapes in my home and certainly not in my daughter's room. I believe that not apologizing for months was more about a lack of remorse than timing." Story: AITA for telling my partner she's neglecting the dog. Me, Mark, and my partner, Rose, have been in a relationship for 3+ years. She's a pilot and I am a manager at a retail store. As you read in the title, she has had a dog for over 3 years as well. Last year she moved away because she found a good pilot job, but unfortunately the places she found to live in do not take dogs. This wouldn't be a big problem since her parents offered to take care of him for however long she needs it, and I live in a small house with my family and a cat. Her mom and dad are amazing guys, they would do anything for their daughter. The mom have some health issues that prevent her from walking the dog and the dad only walks him when he needs a little more. Because of this I would occasionally come and give him walk, play fetch, etc. She travels somewhat often back home to be with him and to do all the things that she has to do back home. A week ago the parents left for the cottage and the dog stayed home with the sister. This was all fine, but then I receive a message from the dad asking if I can take care of the dog for a couple of days since the sister won't be able to do so anymore. This was a Wednesday. I of course told him I could do that with no problem, so for 2 days after work I would drive to their house and walk him, take him out to play, whatever. The third day came and when I show up the sister was there, so there was no reason for me to go, but nobody told me. I was upset at my partner because for all this time that she has been gone she has left the dog to be the parents' responsibility and she wouldn't even know who the dog was staying with or what he needed. So I was upset and I tell my partner that I will take the day for me so wouldn't explode on her. Next day comes and we are texting. She asked me if I was feeling better than the day before and I say yes, but I wanted for us to have a little talk on Monday. She was coming home on the Saturday, but she was going to a 2-day festival and clubbing the same night, so I say Monday for her to enjoy her weekend. She is very impatient, which is why I insist on having the talk on Monday, but it wasn't anything crazy, just a couple of things that I have noticed she was doing. She called me manipulative and trying to ruin her weekend by not telling her there, and if me asking her to look for houses was a manipulative thing, so she wouldn't enjoy her weekend. At that moment I get mad, so I explode and tell her that she has been neglecting her dog. The dog is fat because has no exercise or workout, and that her priority shouldn't be a party or a festival but taking care of the dog, instead of being anxious on what to wear, being anxious on who can take care of the boy. I also said why would she get a dog if she wanted to be a pilot and leave the dog in someone's hands for half of his life. I am not proud on how I said things, but not the meaning of what I said. She always pressures me until I say things I don't want to. Now this sparked a massive fight of her excusing herself, but not taking ownership or acknowledging that things have to be done better. All this was so easy to say in a calm manner, but when my partner points fingers at me and call me names is when I lose my cool, and she knows it very well. So what was going to be a nothing crazy is on the verge of a breakup. Story, AITA for asserting my boundaries of having my own space. I am 32 years old, and my husband is 36-year-old. We have been married for almost 3 years, and we are both Muslims. 4 days ago, I found out I was 12 to 15 weeks pregnant, and 2 days ago, I told my husband. His immediate reaction was to negate what I said and tell me that he will not accept this. He threw the clinic papers on the table and continued to say he was not going to accept this because he is not ready and he was not going to be a part of it at all. He then demanded I go get the abortion pill, and when I did not say anything because I was already crying, he demanded I go get an abortion. I ended up going out because I was really hungry. He ended up falling asleep, and after I came home, I went to bed. The next morning, I woke up for work, and as soon as I was walking out the door, he got up really fast to tell me he was going to pick me up from work to go to the clinic and take care of this as soon as possible. I told him I didn't want to talk about this right now, and I needed to leave for work. He complained and said, "How can you leave me hanging like this?" I told him I didn't want to talk about that now and left for work. Later that day, he asked me to meet him in a public place to talk. I told him I was working until later, and I was too tired, and I wanted to go home right away. He said, okay, and waited for me to get home to talk, and he wanted to talk fast because he had to go somewhere. When we started talking, he basically started off by saying this is not what he expected, that he never agreed to have children right now, and that he was not okay with this because he was not ready. He also continued by saying he had not ended his business inside for a long time now, and that I was deceiving him because he trusted me taking birth control. I told him that in the beginning of our marriage, we agreed to be careful about having kids, but we were also aware they could happen anytime regardless. I have been on birth control consistently for this whole time. I did switch methods at some point, and only recently, my husband started wearing condoms, but not consistently. I do know for a fact that he would sometimes end his business inside. It happened a couple of times, but it did, and most of the time we were together, we didn't wear anything, even if he ended up outside. He is blaming me for the whole situation, and when I confronted him about trying to take me to the clinic, he was dumbfounded and said he wanted to take me to get another test. For reference, I showed him a home test and the clinic test. When I confronted him about it, and asked if he thought I was lying after I gave him a clinic test, he said he was okay with the test I gave him and dropped the clinic issue. When I confronted him about demanding an abortion, he said he wasn't trying to force me to do it, but he also said that if I continued with the pregnancy, I was going to be responsible for the consequences because he wasn't having this situation. He said that he didn't want to have babies if we might move countries. I told him that we can bring our baby anywhere, and we had already had plans to move, so it wouldn't be any change to our plans, and we can rearrange details. He also said that the bottom line was that if I wanted to be with him, we had to push this to the side. He said this pregnancy would break him and ruin everything for us and doom our lives in every way. When I asked him to clarify what he meant, I told him that per his words, there were two paths. If I want to be with him, I must get rid of it. If I don't, he would neglect any responsibility and would not be a part of anything moving forward, meaning he would also abandon me. He tried to tell me that's not what he meant, and I asked him what would happen if I made up my mind and chose to follow through. He said he wasn't sure. He said this is the best for us and our lives, and maybe later, we can have other kids since we are both healthy. For reference, we have been married for 3 years, and we are both Muslims. He did mention that it was allowed to carry out the procedure as long as I am under 4 months, but that's under extreme circumstances where there is something wrong with the pregnancy, not just for any reason. I told him that for us, babies are considered blessings, and they always come with sustenance, But he laughed sarcastically and said this was not the type of blessing he wanted. That he wanted kids, but years later, maybe after 3 years, once we both have our citizenships. His would take about 1 to 2 years from now, because I have to fix mine and request him. He said after this happened, then we could both see where our relationship stands and decide on kids. He has been acting like I am not pregnant and like life goes on, but he said that my choice will either make things work or crush them. I have also been under a lot of stress working extra hours to pay off money I had to borrow for emergencies, so I don't have money to spare for food right now, and he is not worried to ask if I eat or not. I haven't had more than 2 eggs a day for the last 3 days and I feel really tired. He doesn't want anyone to know and he is pretending that this situation does not exist. I'm so exhausted. Story: AITA for continuing to date my boyfriend of 2 years when I feel attraction. I am 23 years old, have been dating my current boyfriend 29 years old for 2 years. How we met: I met him 2 years ago when I got transferred work locations. During that period of my life I was not looking for a relationship, and had never been in a serious relationship before. I had just escaped a mentally, verbally abusive roommate, was going through multiple changes in my life, such as moving homes, changing workplaces, and discovering myself as an individual. I also would like to add that right off the bat, after our first initial meeting I had absolutely attraction to him. He's a bigger guy, 29 years old, 350 pounds or so? And I am 23 years old, considerably younger, a fraction of that weight, sitting at 120 pounds. And quite honestly, dating an overweight guy never even crossed my mind. During that time when I met my now boyfriend, I made it very clear that I was not looking to be in a relationship, that I did not want to date him. I even went as far as sending some pretty hefty text rants about how I felt like he was encroaching on my life too quickly. He assured me constantly during that time about how he didn't expect a relationship out of this and that he just enjoys my company, that he'd wait until I was ready. So, me being lonely, figured, what's the worst that could happen? I assumed I had made my boundaries rather clear and that he understood I wanted nothing more than friendship. In hindsight, saying he would wait until I was ready was a major red flag. Fast forward about 8 months after our initial first meeting, we began hanging out every week, going out to lunches and hitting it off emotionally. Until one day, we were sitting in his car and he began making comments about how I'm basically his girlfriend now because he already has met my mom. Which caught me off guard. I didn't really know how to react or what to say cause we had already gone over this so many times over text. So I chose to not comment and remain quiet. Since then it's been this almost unspoken relationship, and quite honestly I have no clue how we got to this point, as it was never my intentions or what I wanted. But obviously, after 2 years I care about him very much. We even say that we love each other. But I can't help but feel guilty, selfish for allowing it to go on for so long. He's become my best friend and I can't even imagine my life without him. The issue is, we haven't had sex ever in the 2 years I've known him. I've basically become completely celibate, and I crave a sexual relationship with someone else. But because of this unspoken relationship I feel like I can't explore with anyone else or it would be cheating on him. I don't know what to do here, and feel constantly conflicted because I never asked for this. Is this even a relationship if we don't even kiss or have sex ever? At this point we're essentially just best friends. Story: AITA for breaking things off with a man who increasingly gave me the ick. So to start this off, I am so sorry if this is long and messy and drawn out. I'm bad at this and just socializing in general. I am 32 years old, met a man 41 years old, who right off the bat came off very strong with his want to get to know me. Although in the beginning it was a little weird. I went with it thinking that maybe I'm the problem and I need to give people a chance. But as time progressed his mannerisms became more difficult to deal with. Especially the way he speaks, which comes off as very ingenuine. He also always had corrections for anything I would say. Often telling me the right thing to do is such and such, and if we don't want others to interfere we have to do things wrong. Which to me is already weird and icky, because we are adults, so who are these people who have any type of say in a relationship? Next, things like the way he would kiss me while making like a weird whimpering noise that gives me secondhand embarrassment and cringe even typing about it, or how he would push PDA when I've explained 1,000 times that it makes me uncomfortable. During anything intimate, I would feel very, very creeped out. He would call me and leave messages about how he needs me to top him off in the extreme detail. Just everything would make me feel so creeped out and so icky. Gosh, I sound like an awful human. But I just couldn't shake this icky feeling. He would try to push his ideal of who I am and how God picked me for him as a wife. Instead of it being cute or sweet, it was just too soon and too much. Including him trying to convince me to run away with him and get married and move in together. A couple of times he screamed at me, wrote me incredibly hurtful paragraphs. Went so far as blocking me. Then would tell his guy friends a completely different version of what happened, making me look crazy, and would laugh about it as he would tell me. So as this continued, I began to be more and more withdrawn. I am already quite introverted, I am also autistic. He would make me feel stupid and as if I am faking my medical diagnosis and that I need to work on myself to be better. He would complain about how quiet I am, but correct me and then everything I would say into a personal attack. I once mentioned that I was super upset when my parents forced us to move in March. He took this personally and stated that it was insensitive for me to say that to him and that because I met him he should have changed my mind about moving from my home of 30 years. I also made a statement about how men are gross due to some TikToks about men's hygiene and I was laughing about it and he took it extremely personally and lectured me about how cleanly he is and how he has handled sanitizer in his car and blah blah blah. Honestly, it became so exhausting just having any type of conversation with him. I tried multiple times to explain to him that I feel like he thinks I am broken and is trying to fix me and mold me to be his ideal partner, and I cannot be that. He asked me for space when I was being very withdrawn. So I gave it to him. Which then resulted in him telling me he wants more from me in the relationship. Like what? I then hit my last straw when he had a screaming outburst again and unblocked me. I stopped responding to phone calls and texts. The last time we saw each other, spoke etc. was almost a month ago. But I finally bit the bullet and spoke to him and let him know that I think we are incompatible and that I don't have energy for the relationship and I just don't think it will work out. Clearly he was quite angry and began to get loud. I said I don't want to argue and I hope you have a great day and hung up. Story, AITA for saying being a stay-at-home wife is a job. I, 25-year-old, was talking to my boyfriend, 26-year-old, about how I've been feeling drained lately because I feel like I do everything around the house. I work a full-time job Monday through Friday 9 to 5 and often work overtime. I also have a very small business on the side which brings in some extra money every now and then. I live with my boyfriend and he works a full-time job overnight, also with overtime. He expects me to cook, clean, grocery shop, and do everything in between on top of working full-time. When I explained that it's draining, he says he gets it and he helps out sometimes. Most of the time though, it's still all up to me to figure out how I feel and get everything done. Lately I've gotten past the point of being drained and moved into full-blown exhaustion. I agreed that I could take full-time care of the house and other tasks if I didn't need to work, but because I do, I expect more help around the house and he feels like it's not his job as the man. I can admit that I have let the condition of the house spiral a bit because of my exhaustion and feeling unsupported. He feels like as a woman, I should want to take care of everything. He thinks exhaustion is understandable for like a week but not long-term. He thinks because my job is hybrid, that I have time when I'm working from home to do odd tasks around the house and he won't admit to downplaying my job and saying it's easy just because it can be done at home. I feel like he doesn't want to understand how I feel because he wants to be right. I feel like as partners he should want to help more. I pay bills just like he does. I go out and work full-time just like he does. He should be able to cook and clean and grocery shop like me. He suggested me just cleaning up after myself to make it fair, but he doesn't realize how much of a mess he makes on his own. I'm uncertain of what else to say. In our last discussion, he advised me to speak with a married woman to understand if being a stay-at-home wife can be considered employment, as he could not explain it as a man. Married women, what are your thoughts? Am I wrong in believing that being a stay-at-home wife is a job? Am I the asshole? Is it fair for me to work full-time and handle the majority, if not all, of the chores with little to no assistance? Story, 14 years and I kept your secret. It costed me myself. When I was 14, my boyfriend broke up with me, and I had the bright idea of dating his best friend right afterward. Well, after 2 months of dating Chris, I knew it was not going to work out. I didn't have feelings for him like he did for me. I told my mother I was going to break it off. She told me not to. She said that Chris was a very sweet kid. And he was. He was nice, but I just didn't like him in that way. I tried to tell my mom this, but she didn't want me to make the same mistake my sister did and miss out on the nice guy. So, I kept seeing Chris a little while longer, even though I really didn't want to. It slowly got worse. My mom separated from my stepfather in 2010 and moved into the same apartment complex that Chris and his family lived in. He only lived a few doors down. I could see his apartment from my bedroom window. Mom and I moved into the apartment complex, and I started riding the bus with Chris before and after school. I made sure to always keep a smile on my face. Maybe I would learn to love him like Mom said. I used to sit in my closet and cry. I swear I hated myself. I wished I could just develop these feelings with a snap of a finger. I wished I could look this boy in his eyes without wanting to run. He would hold me and cuddle me. I couldn't let how I really felt show on my face, or else Mom would get upset. This is where the story gets complicated, and if you're still here, thanks. I'm not sure how or when or why it started, but Mom pretty much said I was not being flirty enough with Chris through text, not texting like a girlfriend. Makes sense, since I did not want to be his girlfriend in the first place. But I was trying my best. I felt like I failed her. So, Mom took over. She started texting Chris, pretending to be me. She would tell me anything I needed to know before I went out with Chris anywhere. So, she was the person behind the phone, but I was the one Chris was dating. After a while, I could tell he was starting to wonder why I acted so different in person than through text. We dated for a little over a year and 2 months. At some point, Mom suggested to Chris that he should also join the community play I was in after school. One more place I couldn't hide, had to keep pretending to be the girlfriend around my castmates. She even invited him to go out of state and meet family with us during Christmas. God, I hate this memory. I remember telling her I didn't want him to go. She told me it wasn't a done deal anyway, his parents probably wouldn't let him go. I prayed and prayed he wouldn't go. My heart sank when I felt the car pull into his driveway and I heard his parents talking to mine. For the entire 10-plus-hour car ride there and back, including the entire 4-day vacation, I had to put the mask on. Smile when he cuddled me. Giggle when he would tell me how much he loved me. Inside, I felt like the fucking devil. He deserved someone who had those same feelings for him. Okay, time for a plot twist, just to keep things interesting, of course. At some point, some girls started to bully me online, leaving mean comments. In all honesty, they never bothered me that much. But Mom created a fake account, pretending to be a teen girl the same age as me, Molly. Molly was my age, and we met through my older cousin who was in the foster care system in a completely different state, so we only kept in contact through text messages. Keep in mind, Molly is not real. But to me, she was. Mom would stay up for hours at night looking for pictures and editing them online to make them all look like or similar enough to what this Molly girl looked like. I don't know if I can write in words how deep this went. Molly needed friends to be real, so Mom purchased multiple burner phones for each one. She had multiple spiral notebooks with all the different login Facebook accounts for each person. She would only really use Molly, or as far as I know, to talk to people. I found out later she didn't just use Molly to reply to rude comments. She had me talk and act like Molly was real when I was around certain people. "Oh yeah, I saw Molly last week," etc. Right before Mom let me break up with Chris, I started secretly dating a boy named Frankie. I was head over heels for Frankie. He was my first love, and we ended up dating for a little over 2 years. Ready for another plot twist? Frankie had a younger brother named Marco. Both Frankie and Marco did not have the best home life with their guardian. Oftentimes, they would get locked out to sleep in the backyard, or they would have to find something to eat in the dumpster behind the fast food restaurants where they lived. When my mom found this out, she invited them both to live with us. Frankie was 18, and Marco and I were both 16 or 17. Marco is only 8 months older than me. Mom came into my room and laid down next to me one night. I could read the text on her phone over her shoulder. It was from Marco, and it had a winky face. I don't recall what it said, but it made me uncomfortable. I told her, "Mom, he's flirting with you." She tried to brush me off with, "Oh, don't be silly, he didn't mean anything by it." A few days later, they both came to Frankie and me and confessed they started dating. Neither one of us took it well. Mom and Marco argued and fought a lot. It was almost every night we went to sleep listening to an argument. After a while, Frankie and I broke up, and he moved out. No one knew Mom and Marco were dating. It was a secret, one that couldn't come out. Why? Because Mom was trying to get custody of my brother's 3 kids because he was, and still is, struggling with addiction. I couldn't let anyone find out about Marco and Mom for my niece and nephew's sake. That's why I always kept my mouth shut. That, and I felt my mom deserved happiness. She was forced to marry my dad at a young age. I'm in therapy, I know now none of this is an excuse for what she did. She had issues and never worked through them, and now I get to suffer. Before Frankie and I broke up, we went on a trip to the beach. All 4 of us together. Mom and Marco shared a room, and Frankie and I shared the other room. Looking back now, I know how bad this looks. But back then, I was just excited to be with my boyfriend. One night was spent being the mediator between Mom and Marco because they got into an argument. I always defended her. Whenever people would ask why Marco lived with us when he wasn't related to us, I kept the secret. But now I know the truth. After my stepfather passed away, I did what I was always scared to do and did the math from the memories I can remember. And the math broke my heart. You were 45. He was 17. You keep saying, "Oh, I wish you would get over the problem you have with Marco." If he wasn't here, who would help me? I never chose Marco over my kids. Bullshit, Mom. And you know how I know that's bullshit? Because Marco still lives in that house with you. Multiple family members have told you how they felt about Marco, and not once did I say you ever chose him over your kids. But the truth is, you absolutely 100% have chosen Marco over your children. Remember when Marco told me I was the reason for your blood pressure rising? Or what about that giant mirror he broke with his fist while y'all argued? You drove him to the ER while I cleaned up the glass. I asked him to put the dishes away, and he cussed me out, so I locked him out of the house. He climbed through a window to get back inside. I thought that would have been the final straw, but no, he's still here. I realize now, Mom, you're a narcissist, and I love you, but you hurt me, and I spent my whole life safe inside my mind. Now I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, trying to just figure out who I am at 27 years old. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.